The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday morning. I remember because the sky was perfectly clear, the kind of blue that makes my solar panels hum with quiet efficiency. I had just stepped outside with my coffee when the mail truck rolled up. The carrier handed me a thick envelope with the kind of expression that said this probably isn't good news. The return address read, Westfield Ridge Homeowners Association, Legal Department. That alone made my eyebrows rise, because I didn't live in Westfield Ridge. I ripped the envelope open right there in my driveway. Inside was a lawsuit, a real one, filed in county court. The demand? $85,000 in damages for unauthorized structural modification and violation of community architectural standards. I read the line 3 times before it clicked. They were suing me over my solar panels. Solar panels that had been installed legally. Solar panels that had been inspected. Solar panels on a house that wasn't even inside their HOA. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. Then I noticed a name signed at the bottom. Carolyn Whitmore, HOA president. And that's when I realized this wasn't a clerical error. This was personal. Before I tell you how this whole nightmare with the HOA unfolded, I'm curious, where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments. I always read them, and it's amazing seeing how many different places people are tuning in from. And if you enjoy real stories about HOA power trips, legal battles, and homeowners fighting back, make sure you subscribe to the channel. HOA Tales Times. Now let me tell you how an HOA tried to take $85,000 from me, even though I wasn't even part of their neighborhood. I bought my house 12 years ago. It sits on a quiet 2-acre lot at the edge of town, tucked behind a row of oak trees. The property used to be part of an old farm subdivision that existed decades before the new developments started spreading outward. Back then, there were no HOAs, just a handful of independent homeowners and county land records. Then about 6 years ago, a developer built Westfield Ridge right next to my property. Rows of identical houses, perfect lawns, matching mailboxes, and of course, a strict HOA. Their entrance gate sits about 200 feet from my driveway. From the start, I stayed polite but distant. I knew how HOAs operated, and I had zero interest in joining one. Luckily, I didn't have to. My property was legally separate, different plat, different zoning, and recorded long before Westfield Ridge existed. The developer even placed a clear boundary easement between the neighborhood and my land, meaning the HOA had absolutely no authority over my property. For years, that arrangement worked fine, until Carolyn Whitmore became HOA president. Carolyn moved into Westfield Ridge 3 years ago. Within 6 months, she was running the HOA. I met her once before everything started. She knocked on my door one afternoon, wearing a sharp blazer, and the kind of smile that felt more like a warning. "Hi," she said brightly. "I'm Carolyn Whitmore, president of the Westfield Ridge HOA." I nodded. "Nice to meet you." She glanced past me toward my roof, specifically the solar panels. "You're the house outside the development," she said. "That's right." She folded her arms. "You know those panels violate our architectural standards." I stared at her for a moment. "Your standards don't apply here." Her smile tightened. "Well, we'll see about that." At the time, I thought she was bluffing. I had no idea how far she was willing to go. The solar system wasn't some impulsive project. I spent months planning it. I pulled county permits. I hired a licensed installer. Electrical inspectors approved everything. The system produced enough energy to power my entire house and feed excess power back into grid. It was clean, legal, and completely within county regulations. But apparently, Carolyn hated the way it looked, because the panels faced toward the Westfield Ridge entrance, which meant every resident driving through the gate could see them. A week after that first conversation, she showed up again, this time with 2 members of the HOA board. She pointed up at my roof. "Those panels lower our property values." I leaned against my porch railing. "That sounds like a you problem." Her eyes narrowed. "We're prepared to take legal action." I laughed. "Over property you don't control?" Her voice dropped cold. "Everyone answers to someone." That was the moment I realized she wasn't bluffing. But I also knew something she didn't. I had already checked the law, and I had receipts for everything. The letter started first. Official-looking HOA violation notices, each one claiming I was required to remove the solar panels within 30 days. I ignored them because they meant nothing. Then came the complaints. Carolyn filed reports with the city claiming my panels were unsafe. 2 inspectors showed up. They checked the permits, reviewed the installation, looked at the paperwork, and then shrugged. "Everything here is completely legal," one of them said. That should have been the end of it. But Carolyn didn't stop. Instead, she escalated point. 3 months later, the certified letter arrived, the one demanding $85,000. Their claim was ridiculous. According to the lawsuit, my solar panels created visual pollution that harmed the aesthetic standards of Westfield Ridge. They also accused me of violating HOA architectural guidelines. Guidelines I never agreed to. Guidelines that legally didn't apply to my land. But Carolyn's strategy wasn't about being right. It was about intimidation. Most people panic when they get sued. Most people settle. Most people remove the thing causing dispute. Carolyn assumed I'd do the same. Instead, I called a lawyer. My attorney's name was Daniel Price. Calm, methodical, and the kind of guy who actually enjoys dismantling bad lawsuits. He read through the complaint once. Then he leaned back and laughed. "This is the weakest case I've seen all year." I handed him a folder. Inside were copies of everything. Property surveys, county permits, installation approvals, the original subdivision plat from 1987. Daniel's smile widened with every document. "This HOA has zero jurisdiction over your property," he said. That's what I thought. He tapped the lawsuit. They're either incredibly ignorant or incredibly arrogant. I thought about Carolyn. Probably both. Daniel nodded. "Well, we're gonna have some fun with this." Instead of backing off, Carolyn escalated again. 2 weeks after filing the lawsuit, a crew arrived at my driveway with orange cones. They claimed they were marking land for a community landscaping improvement, except the markers extended onto my property, right across the edge of my yard. I walked outside. "Stop." The foreman pointed toward the street. "The HOA authorized it." I shook my head. "They don't own this land." He hesitated. Then his phone rang. After a short conversation, he packed up the crew and left. Later that afternoon, Carolyn appeared at the edge of my property. "You're interfering with an HOA project," she said. I held up a rolled document, a property survey from the county. Her jaw tightened. "You'll regret fighting this." I smiled calmly. I doubt that, because by that point, I had already started preparing something bigger. The first hearing took place 6 weeks later. Carolyn arrived with 2 board members and an expensive lawyer. She looked confident, almost smug, like someone expecting an easy win. The judge asked a basic question. Does the HOA have jurisdiction over the defendant's property? Carolyn's lawyer launched into a speech about community standards and neighborhood impact. Then it was Daniel's turn. He walked to the bench and placed a large map on the table. "This," he said, "is the original county plat map." He pointed to 2 sections, Westfield Ridge subdivision and my client's property. Then he drew a line between them. They are legally separate parcels recorded 30 years apart. The judge leaned forward. "And the HOA has no authority whatsoever over this land." Carolyn shifted in her seat. Daniel continued. "Furthermore, the solar installation was permitted, inspected, and approved by the county." He slid another stack of documents forward. The judge flipped through them, then looked directly at Carolyn. "Why did you file this lawsuit?" She tried to answer, but for the first time, she sounded unsure. That hearing didn't end the case, but it exposed something important. The judge ordered a full review of the HOA's claims. And during that review, Daniel discovered something interesting. Carolyn had approved thousands of dollars in legal expenses without proper board authorization, which violated their own HOA bylaws. He also uncovered emails, dozens of them, messages where Carolyn openly admitted she wanted to force the homeowner to comply, even though she knew my property wasn't part of the HOA. When Daniel showed me the emails, I whistled. That's not good for her. He smiled. "No, it's not." Because now the case wasn't just about solar panels. It was about abuse of authority. Once those emails surfaced, things moved fast. Daniel filed a motion to dismiss the lawsuit. He also filed a counterclaim for harassment and legal abuse. At the same time, several Westfield Ridge homeowners started asking questions. They had no idea their HOA fees were funding a personal vendetta. Soon the HOA board scheduled an emergency meeting. Carolyn tried to control the room, but the evidence was already circulating. One homeowner stood up. "You sued someone who doesn't even live here?" Another added, "And spent our money doing it?" Carolyn tried to defend herself, but the damage was done. The final court hearing happened 2 months later. Carolyn looked very different that day. No confidence, no smug smile, just exhaustion. Daniel presented the emails, the property records, the permits, the HOA bylaws she had violated. The judge didn't take long. The court finds a lawsuit completely without merit. He dismissed the HOA's claim. Then he addressed the counterclaim. Furthermore, the defendant is awarded legal costs and damages for harassment. Carolyn's attorney closed his eyes, because that meant the HOA now owed me money. A lot of it. And the court ordered a formal review of Carolyn's actions as president. Within a month, Carolyn was removed from her position. The HOA board voted her out after discovering the full cost of the lawsuit, over $60,000 in legal fees, most of which had nothing to do with protecting the neighborhood. It was just her personal crusade. Several homeowners even filed a civil claim against her for misusing HOA funds. As for me, my solar panels stayed exactly where they were, quietly producing electricity every sunny day. I saw Carolyn once after the court case ended. She was standing outside the neighborhood gate when I drove past. Our eyes met for a moment. She looked away immediately. No threats, no speeches, just silence. The kind of silence that comes after someone realizes they made a very expensive mistake. Some people think power comes from rules. But real power comes from knowing which rules actually apply. And Carolyn Whitmore learned that lesson the hard way, because the house with the solar panels still shines every morning. And the HOA that tried to control it now pays my legal bills.